The war did not end with a parade. It ended with silence, broken cities drifting in orbit, shattered fleets cooling in the void, and worlds trying to remember what peace felt like. The Galactic War had burned for 12 standard cycles, dragging dozens of species into a conflict they barely understood until humanity arrived and forced an ending no one expected. Staff Sergeant Elias Rourke stood on the landing platform of Forward Station K7, watching evacuation ships depart in steady lines. His armor was scarred, paint burned away, insignia half melted. He had survived 5 major fronts and 2 planetary collapses. Survival felt less like victory and more like unfinished business. Around him, the station buzzed with uneasy cooperation. Former enemies worked side by side now, Kalari engineers recalibrating human reactors, insectoid Vrax medics treating soldiers who once hunted their kind. The war had rearranged the galaxy's power structure, and everyone knew it. Especially the victors. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy. They had done something far more terrifying. They had ended it. When the last enemy coalition surrendered at the Battle of Nyth Prime, the Galactic Council, an institution older than most stars, had fractured under the weight of its own guilt. Records surfaced. Policies were exposed. Entire civilizations realized that the war had been engineered, manipulated, and prolonged by the Council itself to maintain control. And humans? Humans had burned those lies into the light. Elias didn't care about politics. He cared about getting his people home. So when an automated summons arrived bearing the seal of the Provisional Council, he nearly deleted it. Mandatory debrief and asset reassignment, the message read. Asset reassignment never meant anything good. He arrived at the chamber expecting paperwork. Instead, he found a prison hall. Energy restraints lined the walls, each containing beings of different shapes and species. Prisoners of war. Council servants. Former assets. And at the center of the chamber stood a tall alien figure restrained by a halo of light. She, or what Elias assumed was she, stood nearly as tall as he did, slender but powerfully built, skin like polished obsidian threaded with faint bioluminescent patterns. Her eyes glowed a deep silver, unblinking, assessing everything in the room with controlled intensity. A Jarin. Elias stiffened. The Jarin were legendary. A warrior species conquered centuries ago and reduced to bonded servitude by the Council. Their strength, intelligence, and combat reflexes were used as tools, living weapons leased to Council fleets and noble houses. Slaves, dressed up with legal language. A Council adjutant cleared their throat. Staff Sergeant Elias Rourke. In recognition of exemplary service and pursuant to post-war restitution protocols, you are hereby granted custodianship of a liberated Jarin operative. Elias stared. I'm sorry, custodianship of what? The adjutant hesitated. This individual was assigned to a Council commander killed during the final campaign. By tradition, ownership. Stop, Elias snapped. The word echoed. Ownership. The Jarin's gaze snapped to him, sharp and alert, as if waiting to see whether he would accept the role so many others had without question. Elias turned fully to the adjutant. There are no slaves under human command. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The adjutant adjusted their data slate nervously. Human law is not yet universal. Elias stepped closer to the restraint field, stopping just short. Then consider this a demonstration. He raised his gauntlet hand and keyed his command override. The restraints flickered, alarms blaring. Sergeant, you are not authorized. The field collapsed. The Jarin staggered once, then caught herself, muscles coiling, eyes wide with shock. She looked down at her wrists, now free, then back at Elias as if he were something impossible. You're free, Elias said simply. No conditions. No chains. The adjutant sputtered protests. You cannot just. I just did, Elias replied. File the paperwork however you want. Security teams tensed, unsure whether to intervene. The Jarin stood still, clearly assessing the situation, every instinct screaming trap. I am called Sheikah, she said slowly, voice low and resonant. Why do you lie, human? Elias met her gaze. I'm not. She studied him for a long moment, searching for the deception she had been trained to expect. Finding none unsettled her more than cruelty ever had. I am bound by oath, she said. By conditioning. By law. Elias nodded. Then let's break those too. It took weeks. Human medical teams worked alongside Jirin healers who had long been forbidden from practicing their own traditions. Neural shackles were disabled. Conditioning routines dismantled. Legal status rewritten under emergency human jurisdiction. Sheikah remained close, not out of obligation, but curiosity. She had been bred and trained for war, her people stripped of history and choice. Humans confused her. They were brutal in battle, yes, but afterward, they rebuilt enemy cities, fed prisoners, dismantled systems that benefited them because those systems were wrong. You fight like predators, she told Elias once, watching soldiers dismantle weapons for recycling. But you live like guardians. Elias shrugged. We learned the hard way what happens when power goes unchecked. Sheikah watched him often after that. Not with devotion. With study. When remnants of the old council attempted an uprising on the outer rim, it was Sheikah who warned the base first. When enemy infiltrators breached the perimeter, it was Sheikah who fought beside human marines, not because she was commanded to, but because she chose to. Side by side, they held the line. Word spread quickly through liberated systems. Humans did not take slaves. They broke chains. Former bonded species began requesting human oversight not as masters, but as protectors during the transition away from council control. Jirin enclaves formed alliances with human colonies. Joint defense forces rose not based on dominance, but consent. The galaxy struggled to understand it. Elias never called Sheikah his subordinate. She never called him commander. They were soldiers who had survived the same fire, rebuilding something new from the ashes. One cycle later, as humanity prepared to withdraw its fleets and return governance to local systems, Sheikah stood beside Elias on the same platform where it had all begun. Where will you go? She asked. Home, Elias said. Earth. She considered this. My people no longer have one. Elias nodded. Then help us build a better one. Together. She smiled, not the conditioned expression she'd been trained to use, but something real and unfamiliar. In the war's aftermath, she said softly, the galaxy feared what humans would do with victory. Elias watched the stars beyond the station windows. So did we. The ships departed one by one. Not conquerors. Not masters. But something the galaxy had never truly seen before. Liberators.